That nest is getting ready to hatch.
Look at them all.
Are you kidding me?
Goodness.
Each year, from late July to November, tiny sea turtle hatchlings seemingly vanish into the vast ocean along Florida's coast.
The sea turtle lost years includes the time from which the turtles emerge from their nests, crawl down and enter into the ocean, and then they swim offshore.
Bound for destinations unknown, for decades researchers were left to guess where the hatchlings journeyed during their lost years.
We don't really know what they do, where they go, in part because it's really difficult to access those offshore waters. That life history stage has been historically understudied.
Before now, we just called them the lost years and kind of threw up our hands.
Depending on the species, sea turtles can spend anywhere from 2 to upwards of 8 years at sea.
We had to just wave goodbye to a turtle off the beach and then see it again several years later when it came back into shallow coastal waters.
But now, researchers are beginning to unravel the mysteries of the sea turtle's lost years.
For this youngest stage of sea turtle, it's really important for us to understand where they are when they're there so we can better understand perhaps what potential impacts humans might have on these turtles.
Where do sea turtles go during their lost years? And how are new technologies helping to solve this oceanic enigma?
Major funding for this program was provided by the Batchelor Foundation, encouraging people to preserve and protect America's underwater resources, and by Divers Direct Emotion Club, inspiring the pursuit of tropical adventures and scuba diving, and by the Do Unto Others Trust.
Sea turtles have roamed the planet's oceans for 100 million years.
The group the turtles are in as a whole has existed since the dinosaurs existed.
Just in the past few decades, sea turtle populations have declined in certain locations due to poaching, destructive fishing practices, loss of habitat, water pollution, and other pressures.
There's issues that these sea turtles can't overcome without a little bit of help and a little bit of conservation.
There are 6 species of sea turtles found in the United States, and those are protected under the U.S. Endangered Species Act.
So it's just a tremendously complicated problem to manage.
And to do that, you need knowledge. And to gain the knowledge, you have to go out and do research projects like the ones we're doing.
Founded in the late 1970s by Dr. Llewellyn Earhart, the Marine Turtle Research Group at the University of Central Florida was established to better understand coastal sea turtles.
There's a green just north of 8, I think, but I want to know where the loggerhead is.
Today, under the leadership of Dr. Kate Mansfield, the research group's scope has broadened to include the whole life history of sea turtles, from egg to adult, with study sites in the Atlantic and the Gulf of Mexico.
So what I'm trying to do is create a center where we have the early reproductive history, we have the in-water work where we're catching those new recruits to the coastal environment, the larger juveniles, and then we have my offshore work where I'm looking at the early dispersal and movements and behavior of the lost years. So I'm trying to tie that all together in a cohesive research program where we have a whole life history approach.
One of Kate's study sites is in the Archie Carr National Wildlife Refuge along Florida's Atlantic coast. The 248-acre refuge was established in 1991 to protect sea turtle foraging and nesting habitats along this developed barrier island.
The Archie Carr National Wildlife Refuge is one of the most important nesting beaches in the Western Hemisphere. We get more turtle nests in a 13-mile or 20-kilometer stretch of beach than any other place in the U.S.
30 years ago, only 8,000 sea turtle nests were laid in the refuge each year. But in 2013, it saw over 20,000 nests.
So it's this really incredible exponential population growth that can be directly attributed to something like the Endangered Species Act and to the protection that the refuge provides itself.
The Marine Turtle Research Group monitors around 13 miles of coastline in the refuge and has generated more than 30 years of data from these important habitats. The life cycle of a sea turtle begins after a nesting female lays her eggs in the sand, typically on a tropical beach. 6 to 11 weeks later, hatchlings emerge. In the Archie Carr National Wildlife Refuge, sea turtle nests are laid in the sand nearest the dunes, and a turtle can lay more than 100 eggs per nest, upwards of 3 to 5 times per season, depending on the species.
When the hatchlings all hatch out of the eggs, it's really cool because they all work together to get out of the nest. And so what they do is all the little hatchlings push the sand behind them as they go, and so it kind of just makes this elevator where the sand just is rising beneath them. This whole process takes like maybe 2 or 3 days for them to get to the surface.
Most likely, they've evolved to emerge at night where visual predators may not be out as much.
And the sand looks like it's boiling with all these little hatchling heads and flippers.
And if all goes well, the hatchlings will race toward the sea, an innate behavior they've been reenacting for millennia.
They'll focus on the lightest horizon, so in a natural setting, it's the ocean horizon, even on a moonless night. The back dune area is very dark, pitch black, but there's a lighter horizon, and that's where those hatchlings are meant to go, is to the ocean.
These first few minutes after they hatch are a dangerous time for the tiny turtles.
The biggest threat to small hatchlings on the nesting beach, as they emerge from the nest, crabs, raccoons, birds may pick them off.
And in some highly developed coastal areas, sea turtles may mistake beachfront lighting for the horizon and run toward the lights along busy streets rather than the ocean. Along the Archie Carr National Wildlife Refuge, where there is less beachfront lighting from homes and businesses, most hatchlings know just where to go.
And they all run down the beach and into the water as fast as they can.
But even in the water, they're not safe from potential predators.
Once they get into the water, nearshore reef fish, barracuda, snapper, a lot of other species may eat them, and birds may also pick them off because they're swimming at the sea surface. So there are a lot of nearshore predators, coastal predators, that they have to get through in order to get offshore.
No one knows how many hatchlings survive their first day. Some experts estimate that as few as 1 in 10,000 turtles will reach adulthood.
It is an extremely low survivability.
Once in the water, they disappear into the open ocean. What follows is a period known as the lost years, since until recently, the exact whereabouts of the sea turtles during that time was largely a mystery.
These turtles are hardwired to swim as soon as they hatch. They get in that water and they just swim for the horizon.
To get offshore, hatchlings have a long way to go in a short time.
They just swim like little wind-up toys.
Through that 24-hour swimming frenzy that they swim as fast as they can. So they're getting as far away as quickly as possible from the coast.
What they're trying to do is get into the currents.
And they keep swimming until they encounter some good habitat for them.
One of the long-standing hypotheses is that the turtles do associate with sargassum, and they receive benefit from associating with this floating macroalgae.
And that provides two essential things. It's a place to hide from predators, and it's a place to find something to eat.
Sargassum floats freely in the Gulf of Mexico and in the Atlantic, providing a critical habitat for sea life.
The sort of base of the food chain is this drifting sargassum algae.
It's basically this golden oasis out in the ocean.
Sargassum habitat is known to be transient and can move depending on particular oceanic features.
We typically have to go into blue water. We have to go into oceanic water, which means that we have to move off the continental shelf for the most part. In the Gulf of Mexico, we are going out off of Louisiana, anywhere from tens of miles offshore to upwards of 100 miles offshore in order to encounter this habitat, which is ideal for the smaller turtles.
In the Gulf of Mexico, the warm, blue, salty waters of the Gulf collide with the Mississippi River's cold, murky outflow of fresh water. Along this rip, an undulating ribbon of sargassum develops into what is known as a weed line.
That's where turtles will get pushed to, and that's where fish will collect, and crabs and things that turtles like to eat.
Anything from microscopic up to a whale will be around these weed lines, and a really neat environment.
It's along the weed lines that form between the Loop Current and the Mississippi River, where Dr. Kate Mansfield and her research team are hoping to find 1 to 2-year-old sea turtles that drift with the sargassum. Researchers believe young turtles in the Gulf of Mexico swim from nesting grounds in Central America and ride along the Gulf of Mexico Loop Current into North America.
We look for very long lines of sargassum, and we'll just take the boat and cruise along. We'll look for little dark objects in the sargassum, things that look like floating coconuts or an upside down flip-flop.
Once we do decide that, yeah, that's a turtle, then a lot of things do happen at once.
Where is he? Right back, right down.
Once the turtles are on board, the workup begins.
So from the time that we capture the turtles and bring them on board, we'll put them in our cabin, keep them shaded, and we'll work them up. We'll take basic information on the turtles, how long they are, how wide they are, how big their heads might be, and we will weigh them as well. We'll then also insert a little tiny chip or pit tag into their flipper.
Those little implanted pit tags, like the ones the vet uses, microchipping your dog or cat, those are really wonderful tools, and they're a forever tag.
It's so we can identify those turtles later if they're recaptured. We take tissue samples, we will take scoot samples. If they happen to poop on board, we'll take fecal samples.
The researchers also gather sargassum with the creatures that live inside it, from the same areas where they found the turtles floating in the weed line. This will help them to better understand what the turtles eat during their lost years.
We are finding little crustaceans, little crabs, little fish, some fish larvae. It's a real variety. Very little is known about these little turtles, so anything that we can collect, we try to do.
In the future, experts hope to compare the stable isotope ratios collected from the turtle's tissue to those of the prey items living in the sargassum.
So the stable isotope analysis gives us a general idea of where the turtles have been and what they might have been eating.
And it's real kind of cutting edge science.
Once the workup is completed, the team begins the process of satellite tagging the small turtles, something that up until recently was thought impossible.
For a number of years, the satellite tag technology just wasn't small enough to be able to put on the backs of little turtles swimming long distances. The tags themselves had very large batteries that were required to communicate with the overhead satellites.
So there was too much weight and too much drag on the turtles.
And only several years ago did a company come up with a solar-powered tiny little tag for birds that we were able to have them modify slightly to be able to use in a marine environment and use on the backs of tiny little turtles.
Kate and her collaborator, Dr. Jeanette Wyneken from Florida Atlantic University, spent a lot of time making sure the tags were just right.
Working with endangered and threatened sea turtles, we wanted to make sure that what we were doing to the turtles would not unduly harm their ability to survive in the wild, would not affect their growth, would not affect their feeding behavior.
Once they found a satellite tag that would work, they needed to figure out how to attach the tags to the rapidly growing sea turtles.
We'll prep the shell really well. We'll sand down the shell, make sure that there are no little bits and pieces that can peel. There were no previous methods. Traditional hard epoxies that are used on larger sea turtles may stay on for a year, 2 years, 3 years. Those hard epoxies don't allow for the turtles to grow. There's not flexibility to those harder attachments.
So Kate and her team had to be creative to find a solution.
The sea turtle shells in general for loggerheads and hawksbills and other species, they're made of keratin, and they have this outer keratin layer. It's the same thing as our fingernails and toenails. The turtles are growing and they shed the thin layers of keratin as they grow. We were having trouble initially with putting tags on turtles using a variety of different attachment methods. We tested all of this in the laboratory, and the tag attachments were falling off within 1 to 2 weeks. They would have a little tiny bit of shell attached to it. So we finally put 2 and 2 together and realized that we could seal the keratin or seal the shell with acrylic nail fill.
The acrylic nail fill delays the natural peeling process by sealing the sea turtle's shell, but without harming the animal.
That nail acrylic is really critically important to keep the tag on as long as possible.
The next step, with these turtles, unlike the green turtles, there's this vertebral ridge. What we need to do is build up sides. So we're going to put 2 strips of old wetsuits onto the shell. We're going to glue it with hair extension glue, and we'll let that cure for just a couple minutes. It's very fast. And then we'll attach the tag with aquarium silicone.
This method allows the tags to stay on for several months before they naturally slough off. This gives the experts the chance to collect longer-term data on the movement of the turtles.
What they came up with the solar-powered little transmitter and attachment technique took years of lab work, and it really goes to their persistence.
She's learned an awful lot about it, and is really a pioneer with these very small turtles.
Shell composition can vary by species, so they had to use a different method to attach satellite tags to green turtles.
For the green turtles, their shell is very different and it feels different. The shell is almost like Teflon.
The green turtles seem to have a little more of a waxy coating on their carapace.
And anything that we would put on the turtle would just fall right off within less than a week. So we ended up testing a number of other different options and came up with a very simple solution, which is just a flexible boat adhesive, and it works pretty well.
Once the turtles are tagged, the team waits an hour or so for the adhesives to dry. The animals are then released in the same general area where they were captured.
One of the long-standing hypotheses about these young oceanic stage turtles is that they tend to just drift. They get offshore and they're passive drifters for a number of years. We don't know how long.
And so we released the drifter at the same time that we released the turtle with the satellite tag, and then compare the tracks to see how they differ. And they definitely do differ quite a bit over time.
The turtles, they're actually actively moving to different habitat, which would probably make sense.
Because these oceanographic features, these weed lines and convergence zones, they disappear and they move.
And they actively seek out other big hunks of sargassum where they're going to find food. And that's just a matter of survival, looking for food. But to prove that is pretty unique.
Young sea turtles Kate satellite tagged in the North Atlantic Ocean provided the first conclusive evidence detailing what happens to sea turtles during their lost years.
They can cover tremendous distances and sort of ride the big ocean highways of these currents, coming back around, making trips that last years and covering thousands and thousands of miles. So they're really world travelers.
And the sea turtles didn't just travel far.
I think it's astonishing how quickly they travel when they're released. We had turtles that after maybe 1 or 2 weeks were already up off North Carolina when Kate released them off the coast of Florida. And so traveling hundreds upon hundreds of miles in 2 weeks is unheard of for most species. But for turtles, it's practically normal. It's not even really surprising, but it's really cool to see it.
Data on the sea turtles her team captured and tagged in the Gulf of Mexico is still emerging, but revealed no less surprising preliminary results.
Here is a map from the turtles that we tracked this year in the Gulf of Mexico. We're seeing a real mix of behaviors. A number of the turtles that we tagged have dispersed fairly far from where we initially released them off of the coast of Louisiana. These data are the first in-water captured sea turtles that have been satellite tagged. So it's really the first information on where the turtles are going, what they're doing, how they're interacting with their physical environment in the open ocean.
The key message is the lost years are no longer lost years. We have some ideas now.
698.
While Kate's team has gained insight into the lost years of sea turtles in the North Atlantic Ocean and the Gulf of Mexico, there is much left to learn.
It's still a great mystery.
And it's kind of neat because we're asking some really basic, fundamental, almost naturalist questions about the life history and the behavior of the turtles that haven't been answered yet.
Once they grow to about dinner plate size, sea turtles leave their open ocean home and migrate to coastal areas.
So we don't know how long the lost year time frame is, that oceanic stage, but after several years, depending upon the species, the turtles will then recruit into nearshore habitats as larger juvenile sea turtles.
They're programmed to turn around and head back into shallow water. Except for the leatherbacks, they'll stay out there their whole lives.
Those species that do migrate to the coast have grown large and fast enough to avoid nearshore predators, like sharks.
And that's a place where there's more food items and shelter places that are appropriate for a little bigger turtle.
We don't know how long that juvenile coastal phase is, but they will reach maturity depending upon species in 20 to 30 years.
As they approach sexual maturity, the teenage year, they'll start migrating to a nesting beach.
After they've mated offshore, pregnant females come to shore to lay their eggs along the beach. An ancient ritual that repeats itself with each new generation.
Most turtles lay their eggs on the nesting beach where they themselves were hatched. They remember and imprint on that beach.
The life cycle comes full circle.
And start that process over again.
Major funding for this program was provided by the Batchelor Foundation, encouraging people to preserve and protect America's underwater resources, and by Divers Direct Emotion Club, inspiring the pursuit of tropical adventures and scuba diving, and by the Do Unto Others Trust.